My name is Quinn. I'm 33 years old, living in Denver, Colorado. Ethan and I have been married for almost 4 years, together for a total of 7. We used to talk about having kids, vague conversations during rainy nights or after a few glasses of wine, things like, someday, when things settle down. When I get promoted. When I'm tired of business trips. But that someday never had a real date. I'd been taking birth control regularly, but last month I had a terrible sinus infection and had to take strong antibiotics for almost a week. The doctor mentioned possible drug interactions, but I didn't think much of it. A few weeks later, my period was late. At first, I blamed work stress. Things at the office had been intense. Long hours, irregular meals, barely any sleep. But then I started feeling nauseous every morning. My chest felt sore in a way that didn't feel normal. And deep inside, something whispered that my body was different. I quietly bought a pregnancy test after work, tucked it in my purse between my notebook and car keys. I couldn't bring myself to use it right away. It wasn't until the next day, when the doubt became too loud to ignore, that I finally stepped into the bathroom. 2 lines, clear, bold, no mistaking it. I tested 3 more times over the next 2 days. Every one said the same thing. I sat frozen on the bathroom floor, still holding the test. My heart pounded wildly. Part of me was stunned, but another part felt oddly relieved. I had always feared Ethan might never be ready, but me? I wanted to be a mother. I had for a long time. After a few days of thinking, I decided to tell Ethan on Saturday night. I didn't plan anything flashy, no reaction videos, no fancy letterboards like on Instagram. I just wanted a quiet, honest moment, something true to who I am. I cooked his favorite meal, red wine braised beef with buttery mashed potatoes. I played soft jazz, lit some candles, and put on the olive dress he always complimented. I wanted the night to mean something, not perfect, but memorable. Ethan came home late. It was nearly 8 p.m. when he opened the door, trailing expensive cologne and a faint trace of smoke. His shirt was wrinkled, tie crooked. He walked in, pulling off his coat as he spoke quickly. Sorry, emergency meeting, you know how that project's been dragging. I didn't blame him, didn't ask questions. We sat down to eat. He chewed absent-mindedly, eyes locked on his phone, fingers scrawling endlessly. I asked a few things about work. He gave short, distracted answers. When he finally set down his fork and knife, I poured him another splash of wine, took a deep breath. Ethan, I have something important to tell you. He looked up, brow furrowing. What is it? I tightened my hands in my lap, then said it. I'm pregnant. The silence that followed felt like ice. He stared at me like I'd spoken nonsense. His face went pale, then flushed, then shifted into something I couldn't name. I've tested 3, 4 times, all positive. I'm sure. He shoved his chair back, jumped to his feet, eyes wide. Quinn, are you serious? You know we're not ready. You've ruined everything. I went still. Ruined? He didn't look at me, just paced the living room, pulling at his hair, breathing fast. I've got 100 things up in the air. A baby? Now? I don't want this, Quinn. I never did. My feet wouldn't move. My heart twisted inside my chest. The meal sat cold. The candles dimmed. The kitchen felt colder than it should have. The dress he once loved, now hanging on me like a question. Now a bitter memory. I didn't move as the kitchen dimmed, the scent of red wine beef hanging in the air like a bitter punchline. Ethan wasn't angry anymore. He slumped onto the couch, head in hands, silent for what felt like forever. Then, suddenly, he got up and walked quickly to the bedroom. I followed, my heart still trembling, unsure of what was happening. Where are you going? I asked, my voice barely steady. Ethan pulled out the medium suitcase we had used for Boston last year. I can't stay here, Quinn. I need time to think. I stepped forward, blocking his hand. What does that mean? I'm carrying our child, Ethan. We need to talk, not run. He looked at me, not panicked now, just cold. You don't get it. I don't want this baby. I never really wanted kids. I just said what you wanted to hear because I thought you'd change. Flash. I stepped back. Every word stung like a slap. But that wasn't what broke me. It was what he said next. I'm with Camille. We've been seeing each other for a few months. Her name echoed in my skull. Camille, the 26-year-old intern who once dropped off documents at our house. I even gave her cookies. I leaned against the wall, nausea surging through me. Ethan zipped the suitcase in silence. When I asked, "You're really going to her place?" He didn't deny it, just turned around, pulled the zipper shut. "I'll come back for the rest later. Don't make this a big scene with my family. My mom's already stressed about Uncle Grant." "What about me? Don't I matter enough for you to think just once?" He stayed silent for a moment, then spoke softly. "I'm sorry, Quinn, I'm not the man you thought I was." As the door closed behind him, no hug, no wish of luck, just me, and the hollow shell of the man who once promised me forever. I collapsed onto the floor, one hand on my belly, the other fumbling for my phone. The only person I could call in that moment was Riley, my best friend since college. She picked up after the first ring. "Quinn, what's wrong? Are you okay?" I couldn't speak, I just cried, loud, aching sobs that made it hard to breathe. 20 minutes later, Riley was at my door, hair tied up hastily, wearing an old hoodie. She wrapped her arms around me, not caring that I was shaking like I had a fever. "You're not alone. Listen to me, I'm here. You're going to get through this." The next morning, as I poured myself the first glass of water for the day, my phone rang. It was Eliza, Ethan's mother. I picked up, but before I could say anything, she went straight to the point. "Ethan told me what happened last night. Quinn, are you planning to keep the baby?" I gripped the phone tightly. "Yes." "Why do you ask?" "You know Ethan's not ready for this. He's at a crucial point in his career. There's an opportunity in the Boston office. A child now would only complicate everything." "What exactly are you suggesting?" I asked, though I already knew. "I just mean, maybe you should consider all your options. You're still young, life is long." I steadied my voice. "You're right. Life is long, and I choose to spend the rest of mine as a mother. Even if I have to do it alone." I hung up. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from anger. I used to think my in-laws would be a support system when things got rough, but no. All they cared about was reputation, career, and so-called stability. No one thought about me. No one thought of this baby as a life. I placed my hand on my stomach. Still so small, barely noticeable, but I knew it was there. And I would protect it at all costs. I didn't hear anything from Ethan for an entire week after he walked out. No calls, no messages asking how I was or how the baby was doing. After 7 days of nothing, all he sent was one sentence. "I'll send money at the beginning of the month, for now." And just like that, I became a single mom unofficially, with no agreement, no explanation, just me and the baby growing inside me, left to figure it all out. I didn't have time to fall apart again. The next morning, I scheduled my first prenatal appointment. I drove myself to a women's clinic in 5 Points, no referral needed, because I was already too far along to wait for paperwork. When the nurse asked me to lie down for the ultrasound, I took a deep breath, gripping the hem of my shirt. The screen lit up. A blurry shape appeared. Then came the sound, the heartbeat. Fast, strong, urgent, like it was saying, "I'm here." That afternoon, I stopped by the cafe where Riley worked. As soon as she saw me, she pulled me into a hug without saying a word. "I heard the heartbeat," I whispered, eyes still red. Riley didn't say anything. Without a word, she reached over, wiping my tears gently and placing a warm waffle in front of me. I started researching everything. What it takes to raise a child alone, money, time, legal support. I scheduled a consultation with a divorce attorney. Ms. Lawson, a middle-aged woman with a sharp voice but kind eyes. She told me, "Quinn, if Ethan stays silent, we can still file. Don't wait on someone who's already chosen to leave." I also decided to move out of the old apartment, the place where Ethan's presence lingered in every corner. From the chipped coffee mug to the curtains I picked to match his favorite shirt. Riley offered me a temporary place at her home. She had a spacious living room just a 15-minute drive from my office, and most importantly, no painful memories. I sold the cream love seat Ethan once picked out, the one he sat on watching football while Camille texted him goodnight. I packed everything, but there was nothing I truly wanted to keep, except my prenatal documents and a few favorite books. The baby grew, I switched to flats, learned how to breathe through stair climbing, and adjusted to sleepless nights from leg cramps. My company allowed me to work remotely 3 days a week, and I appreciated that more than any benefit I'd ever signed for. I attended prenatal classes on Tuesday evenings. I was the only one there without a partner. When the instructor asked for a support person to stand behind me during breathing practice, an older woman gently approached. "Is your husband working late?" I gave a faint smile. "No, he's busy disappearing." By week 38, I was exhausted. I spent my spare time checking the budget spreadsheet, assembling the crib, and listening to Riley list classical songs to play at bedtime. She even bought me a giant U-shaped pillow and called it the secret weapon of senior-level moms. Then the day came. Early Wednesday morning, as I tried to get out of bed, a sharp pain hit, and my water broke. Riley drove like she was in a Formula One race. By the time we got to the hospital, I was 4 centimeters dilated. By hour 10, I couldn't tell if I was breathing or groaning. By hour 16, I said I couldn't do it anymore. Riley squeezed my hand. "You're doing it. And you're not alone." 19 hours after the first contraction, a cry filled the room. I barely had the strength to lift my head, but when the nurse placed the baby on my chest, his soft skin against mine, every ache disappeared. A boy, rosy cheeks, eyes shut tight, tiny fingers curled around mine. I named him Aiden. There was no Ethan, no message, no congratulations. But as I held my son close, I knew none of that mattered anymore. Aiden and I had begun our journey, and I would never let anyone walk away from it again. I returned to work when Aiden was exactly 9 weeks old. Honestly, I wasn't ready. My body still ached, my chest was sore, and my mind kept circling the same questions. Is he eating enough? Is he sleeping okay? But money doesn't wait for anyone. The small apartment I rented near Riley's place was cozy, but more expensive than the old one. Add in diapers, formula, pediatric visits, and now part-time daycare, everything climbed, week by week. Ethan did send money, but it was inconsistent. Some months I got a few $100s, some months there was nothing at all. Only a text, short and empty. "This month's tight. I'll make it up next month." I used to reply politely, gently remind him. But after the 4th time, I stopped responding. I didn't have the energy to plead with someone who had left me in labor. I woke up at 5 a.m. every day, squeezing in a quick shower, preparing bottles, packing Aiden's things, then caught a taxi to drop him at daycare before starting my shift at the architecture office. At lunch, I pumped in the restroom, checking our monthly budget while sending report emails. Some days, I had barely settled into work when the center would call, "Aiden has a low fever. Can you come get him?" I'd ask for emergency leave. My boss's irritation was obvious, but when I got home and Aiden clung to me, cheeks flushed, wheezing softly, I wrapped him in a blanket, sat on the chair, and hummed. And for the first time, I felt like I'd done something right. Simply holding him when everything else felt uncertain. One February afternoon, I got a message from an unknown number. "Hello, Quinn, this is Celeste, Ethan's mother. I heard the baby was born. May I come visit my grandson?" I read it over and over. No apology. No acknowledgement that they once implied I should terminate the pregnancy. Just a gentle request, as if nothing had happened. I thought about it for 2 days. Finally, I replied, "You can come Saturday for 1 hour." I didn't do it for Ethan, not even for her. I did it for Aiden. I didn't want my child to grow up never meeting his paternal grandparents, not even once. That Saturday, I wore simple clothes and held Aiden on the sofa while Riley quietly brewed tea. Celeste arrived on time, wearing a dark brown coat, carrying a large gift bag full of expensive baby items. Ethan wasn't with her. She sat down, looked at Aiden for a long time, then smiled. "He looks just like Ethan." She began asking questions about his weight, vaccination schedule, daycare, as if we were 2 moms casually chatting in a park. Every question was polite but cold. Not a word about Ethan disappearing, not a single, I'm sorry I didn't stand by you when you needed support. And she asked, when will you let him stay overnight at our house? I gently placed my teacup on the table. Sorry, but that won't happen. Aiden's still too young. And I can't let my child stay somewhere that once questioned whether he should even be born. She looked up, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. Quinn, I know you're upset with Ethan, but your son shouldn't be affected. I clenched my hands, kept my voice steady. That's exactly why I allowed this visit today. But if you want to be part of Aiden's life, the first step is to acknowledge what happened. I don't need anyone coming here to rewrite the truth. The visit ended in under 40 minutes. She stood, kissed Aiden's forehead, and left without promising anything else. The taillights faded into the distance, leaving only silence at my doorstep. Riley came over and placed a hand on my shoulder. You okay? I'm starting to see clearly who's genuine and who's not. The next week, Ethan posted a new photo on Instagram. He was in Palm Springs holding hands with Camille, sipping cocktails under the sunset. The caption read, New Year, New Peace. The image on my screen felt distant and hollow, so I turned to what was real, Aiden, fast asleep in his rocker. I smiled, not with sarcasm but because I understood. Peace isn't something you post. It's something you build, bit by bit, with the choices you make every day. When Aiden turned 3, I was promoted at the architecture firm I'd worked at for nearly 7 years. The title of Senior Design Coordinator wasn't just recognition for the sleepless nights spent over blueprints. It was an answer to a question I once feared to ask. Can I really do this? Even with dark circles from staying up with a feverish toddler? Even bringing my laptop to the vaccine waiting room? Even skipping meals but never missing a deadline? I hadn't given up. And now, I could stand firmly on my own 2 feet. 4 months after the promotion, I put down a deposit on a small house in the suburbs of Aurora, about a 30-minute drive from downtown Denver. The house wasn't big, just 1 story, 2 bedrooms, but it had a lush backyard, perfect for a garden and a space where Aiden could run free. When I signed the contract, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from emotion. I once thought I'd rent forever, thought a real home was something only 2 people could build. But no, a home is where love lives. And I had more than enough of that for Aiden. Life settled into a rhythm. I woke up at 6 a.m., made breakfast, and woke Aiden with kisses on his cheek. He always smiled before even opening his eyes, like he already knew I was there in his dreams. At night, we ate under the warm glow of the kitchen light. He told me stories from preschool, often adding wild details that made me bite my lip not to laugh. He had a special love for the sky. Every night he insisted on going into the backyard to look at the stars, pointing up and asking, Mom, which one is Sirius and is that a planet? I wasn't an astronomer, but for him I studied again, read through 10 websites just to answer, why don't stars fall on our heads? Still, there was one question I never found easy to answer. One Monday afternoon, as I was slicing fruit for him, Aiden suddenly asked, Mom, why don't I have a dad like Noah? I froze. Knife in hand, heart gripped tight. I sat beside him, pulled him close, gently brushed his soft curls. You have me, Auntie Riley, Grandma and Grandpa, even your basketball coach, right? Aiden nodded, his big dark eyes still locked on mine. Your dad helped me have you. But some grown-ups, they aren't ready to be dads. That's not your fault, sweetheart. And I love you enough for both of us. Aiden didn't say anything. A moment later, he picked up a slice of apple and held it to my mouth. Then eat this, Mommy. I love you for 2 people. I pulled him into my arms and just breathed, deep, quiet, and full. I started journaling my motherhood journey every night after Aiden fell asleep. Not to complain, but to remember. To remember how strong I was, carrying him to doctor appointments alone. To remember the moment Aiden learned to walk, fell down, then stood up again, lips trembling but still smiling. To remember our first Christmas Eve, just the 2 of us, strangely warm and magical, when he shouted, Santa found our house even without a chimney, Mommy? Little by little, I stopped feeling pain when I saw families of 3 holding hands at the park. I no longer felt out of place at parent-teacher meetings filled with mom and dad duos. I wasn't jealous anymore. I felt proud. Proud that I hadn't given up. That I didn't let a man define my worth. That my son was growing up surrounded by love, respect, and honesty. One evening, while I was hanging string lights in the backyard for Aiden to stargaze, Riley showed up with a pizza box and a cold bottle of soda. "This is your prize, most engaged parent of the year, straight from preschool headquarters." I laughed and leaned my head on her shoulder. Probably because I baked the most cupcakes during Teacher Appreciation Week. "No," Riley said, her voice sincere. "It's because you never gave up. That's what really matters." I looked up at the sky, those same stars sparkling like always. But tonight, they felt brighter. Or maybe something inside me had been glowing for a long time. For the first time at Aiden's preschool back-to-school night, I arrived late, caught in a sudden downpour, hair a mess, coat soaked through. I awkwardly scanned the crowded classroom for a seat, when a calm, low voice offered, "There's room here, if you don't mind." I sat down and turned to thank him. He looked to be in his 30s, simple button-up shirt, slightly tousled hair, but a calm, kind gaze. "I'm Douglas, Emma's dad," he said. "Quinn, Aiden's mom." The meeting went on as usual, except for Aiden and Emma giggling uncontrollably at their not-so-quiet whispers. The teacher gently suggested, "Maybe we should seat these two a little farther apart." Afterward, we walked our kids to the parking lot together. Douglas told me his wife had passed away from a terminal illness when Emma was just 1. "I was afraid I'd mess everything up," he said, tying Emma's shoelace. "But kids are stronger than we think." I managed a small smile, though I wasn't sure if it came from empathy or admiration. In the weeks that followed, we ran into each other more often, during pickups, at the park near school, even at the grocery store when both kids insisted on the same brand of cookies. One day, after Emma begged Aiden to come over and play, Douglas turned to me. "If you don't mind, I'd love to have both of you over for dinner. I'm making pizza. Not great at it, but if Emma eats it, I call it a win." I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "If Aiden agrees to dinosaur-shaped pizza, then you've got yourself 2 guests." That dinner was unexpectedly warm. Douglas let the kids make their own pizzas. Oval crusts, mountains of cheese, pepperoni cut into dinosaur shapes. Aiden laughed louder than I'd heard in weeks. Douglas asked what I'd like to drink and made me a cup of spiced orange tea, saying, "The first time I tried this, it felt honest, not too sweet, not sharp. Kind of how I wish people would live." I didn't know how to reply. I just remember my heart softening, in a way it hadn't for a long time. After that night, the get-togethers became more frequent, though neither of us labeled them. When I was swamped, Douglas picked up Aiden. When he had a last-minute meeting, I brought Emma to school. Aiden started calling Emma my twin who's not from the same day. And me. I started smiling more. One evening, after a school meeting, Douglas walked me to my front door. I held a bag of leftovers, ready to say thank you, when he suddenly asked, "Have you ever thought about starting again?" When I met his gaze, I saw no urgency, just quiet curiosity, steady and kind. I answered softly, "I used to think I didn't deserve that. But lately, I'm starting to believe maybe I deserve something gentle." We started dating. Slowly. Movie nights with old cartoons. Weekend bike rides on grassy trails. Late-night texts asking, "Is Aiden asleep yet?" While I folded laundry in silence. Douglas never asked about Ethan. But one night, when Aiden had a low-grade fever, Douglas showed up with a thermometer, children's Tylenol, and a brand-new stuffed bear. I opened the door, not even sure what to say, but he just rested his hand on my shoulder and asked, "Are you okay? Not physically, emotionally?" I tilted my head in quiet agreement. And this time it was real, not the kind of nod you give just to reassure others. One early winter night after Emma's birthday party, both kids were sound asleep. Douglas and I sat in the backyard, wrapped in a thick wool blanket. He pulled out a tiny muffin from his pocket. "No candle, but you can still make a wish." "Wish for what?" He tilted his head. "Whatever you want. But if it were me, I'd wish to be the man Aiden would choose to call Dad one day. Not to replace anyone, just to stay long enough for him to say it on his own." I didn't answer right away. I just rested my head on his shoulder, listening to the soft wind brushing past the wooden fence, and thought, maybe this time, happiness didn't forget me. One early summer Saturday morning, the sky was so blue it felt like everything in the world was at peace. Aiden had his first soccer game of the season at the park near our house, and both Douglas and I were there, sitting under a big umbrella, coffee in hand, camera ready. Aiden wore jersey number 7, sprinting around the field in bright orange cleats he insisted on picking because they matched the oranges I always peel for him. Douglas laughed watching him, then turned to me. My guess is we're getting either a goal scorer today or a kid who accidentally scores for the other team. I laughed, my heart light, but that feeling only lasted about 10 seconds, until I saw Ethan. From across the field he stared, motionless, as if the world had narrowed down to one small boy in orange cleats. I froze. My whole body went cold, like a surge of electricity shot down my spine. When the first half ended, Aiden ran over for water and wrapped Douglas in a tight hug. That's when Ethan started walking toward us. Aiden glanced his way and whispered, "Mommy, who's that man? Why is he staring at me?" I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Go on back to the field, sweetheart. I'll talk to him." Aiden nodded and ran off, carefree like any other child, and I stood there, facing the man who walked away the night I told him I was pregnant. He took off his cap, revealing a face more worn than I remembered. "Hi, Quinn. I heard Aiden goes to school here. I just wanted to see him, just for a moment." I crossed my arms. "After 5 years? You think watching from a distance is enough?" Ethan exhaled, eyes turning red. "I know I was wrong. I quit drinking. I'm trying to fix what I broke." I was about to turn away when Douglas approached. "You okay?" I said, "This is Ethan." Douglas looked Ethan straight in the eye and said calmly, "I'm Douglas, Aiden's father." Ethan stiffened. "Father, what do you mean? I cut him off. "Biological father, Ethan. But Douglas is the one who gets up early to take him to school, the one who carried him when he had a fever, the one he calls Dad when he wakes up from nightmares." Ethan went silent, hands clenched. "I just want to see him, just once." I looked at him for a long time before replying. "We'll talk after the game, briefly." After the match, Douglas took Aiden and Emma for ice cream. I sat across from Ethan at a cafe near the soccer field. He ordered 2 coffees, just like old times. Cappuccino. But I'd switched to lattes 3 years ago. A small detail, but enough to remind me he no longer knew who I was. "How have you been all these years?" I asked. Ethan sighed. "After Camille left because I refused to have kids, I realized what I lost. I lost you. I lost our son. I lost everything." He lowered his head. "I want to make it right. I want a second chance. Not just with Aiden, with you. Ethan, we're not anything anymore. You walked away when I needed you most. And Douglas stayed. I have nothing to give you except boundaries." 3 days later, Ethan came back, but this time he wasn't alone. Celeste and Michael, his parents, showed up unannounced, standing at my doorstep like everything could be fixed with a belated apology. "We want to see our grandson, and Ethan has a right to be his father," Celeste said, her tone still laced with that familiar pride. I clenched my fists. "You once told me to terminate my pregnancy for Ethan's career, and now you talk about rights? I don't owe anyone anything." Douglas stepped closer, his hand resting between my shoulders like a quiet shield. Michael spoke up. "Ethan's changed. He deserves a chance." I said firmly, "That chance doesn't begin with showing up at my door without notice. If he wants to see Aiden, he'll follow conditions, and the first one is, respect boundaries." After that abrupt visit, I met with Attorney Harper, the same lawyer who helped me secure sole custody years ago, to discuss terms for Ethan's contact with Aiden. "He can see his son," I said, "but every visit must be supervised, and if he misses more than 2 without notice, the visits will be suspended." That's completely fair, especially since Ethan missed the most formative years of the boy's life. The initial visits took place at the Family Resource Center in Thornton. Aiden was informed beforehand. I chose my words carefully. You're going to meet a man named Ethan. I want you to know, if you feel uncomfortable at any time you can say so. No one will force you to do anything. Aiden nodded. His expression wasn't excited, just a little curious. He chose to wear the blue plaid shirt Douglas gave him for his birthday last year and tucked his favorite stuffed dinosaur into his backpack. The visit lasted exactly 30 minutes. Ethan showed up on time, brought a box of Legos and tried to make conversation. Aiden gave short answers, eyes often drifting to where I sat in the corner. Afterward he asked me, "Mom, is he my real dad?" "Yes, but you get to decide who you call dad. That's your choice." Aiden thought for a moment, then said softly, "Seemed kinda weird, but not bad." "That's enough, sweetheart," I smiled. Douglas never asked too many questions. He simply supported us, taking Aiden out to play after each visit, reading longer bedtime stories every night, and always keeping ice cream stocked in the freezer like he knew our boy might need a little sweetness to soften unfamiliar feelings. My family, Riley, my parents, Douglas, and even Emma, remained the real family Aiden grew up with. None of them ever left me behind. None of them ever made my son feel like a burden. 2 months later, Ethan asked to meet with me privately. I agreed, but only at Attorney Harper's office. He came in with a more subdued gaze, no longer carrying that performative regret from before. "I get it now," he said after a long silence. "He doesn't need me the way I thought. And maybe I'm just not enough to be what he needs." "Ethan, that boy needs consistency, not guilt arriving late." "Douglas is good to him," he said. "I've seen it. And you seem okay." I didn't deny it. I was okay, not because Ethan had left, but because I had chosen to keep living, fully. One late autumn afternoon, I stood in front of our small house, watching Aiden and Emma kicking a soccer ball around the yard, their laughter echoing through the crisp air. Douglas was fiddling with the new nameplate for the mailbox. The Willow family, since the old one had worn off. I just stood there, hands wrapped around a cup of hot tea, heart still as a pond after wind. There was no big wedding, no grand announcement, but we had chosen each other, every day. That night, Aiden fell asleep early after his art class. I gently pulled up his blanket and sat by his bed for a long while. His sleeping face always reminded me that I was doing something right, even if every day felt like solving a puzzle without instructions. I brushed his forehead gently and whispered, "You may not have started like everyone else, but you have enough love to grow strong." I stood up and quietly closed his door. In the soft warmth of our little house, I walked toward the kitchen light, where Douglas was rinsing our evening teacups. He turned and smiled. "Want to plant some flowers tomorrow?" "Yes, let's plant sunflowers," strong and always turning toward the light. Life doesn't always go as planned, but sometimes the unexpected turns are what reveal the strength we didn't know we had. Quinn endured betrayal, loneliness, and the pain of being abandoned while pregnant. But instead of breaking, she chose to rise, rebuilding life for herself and her son. Through every challenge, Quinn found not only new happiness but also the power to set boundaries, forgive at the right time, and love the right person, with the quiet strength and boundless heart of a mother. What do you think about Quinn's journey and the choices she made? Would you have done the same in her place? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow